Hello, and welcome to I Am Dad Podcast with your fatherhood authority, Kenneth Braswell. 30 minutes of wisdom, information, resources, and nuggets to help you on your fatherhood journey. Or maybe you're just curious and want to hear some real talk about fatherhood, family, and the minds of men. Well, guess what? We got you too. Sit back, grab your pad and pen, and maybe even bring a little something to sip on. Enjoy 30 straight minutes of fatherhood, family, and fun with the Fatherhood Authority, Kenneth Braswell.
Welcome to I Am Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Kenneth Braswell. Thank you for joining me once again on a Sunday morning as we always kick off a new episode at this time for you early birders that are up on a Sunday morning. Thank you for getting up and thank you for following our podcast. I think I've been saying to you guys over the last week or so, last few weeks I've been talking about this. And according to FeedSpot, which is one of the analytics for podcasts around the world in all kinds of genres, over like 2 million podcasts they follow. And in the dad category, I Am Dad Podcast is number 7 out of almost 1,750 podcasts around the world. And so I am extremely happy about that. Now, let's see that show up in the subscribes. So this is where we're headed this morning, right? And so I've been told by all of my analytic people that I got to promote the thing, and I don't. I'm such a not thinking about that. I'm always just kind of doing my thing and don't think about those other things I got to push. But if you up early in the morning, you watching this on YouTube, there's a little subscribe button right below that. Do me a favor, hit that button and subscribe to us on YouTube. Because what my analytics are telling me about YouTube is that 98% of the people who watch the podcast on YouTube are not subscribers. So I need you to hit that subscribe button. And the same thing for those of you who are listening on any other podcast platform. There is a subscribe, follow button. Please hit that button because that's what will open up the analytics for us to get to the number 6, the number 5, the number 4, the number 3, the number 2, and even the number 1 spot. So let's do this thing. And hit those subscribe buttons. I want to see these needles begin to move over the next few weeks. As always, I always have, just good people on my show. I always love my conversations with everyone that has come across I Am Dad Podcast. This gentleman is no stranger to my space, Mr. Joseph Stiltner. He grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I think he's like a quiet Steelers fan, but we ain't going to talk about that right now. We'll come back at that in a few minutes. But right now, he calls South Carolina home, at least for the last 13 years. And I'm sure he's going to stick with the Steelers because South Carolina ain't got no football team and they don't got no basketball team. And so, but you know what? They got the Gamecocks and they got dynamic and awesome college teams. And so he is married to Megan Scarfone. Is that how you say her name, or Scarfone?
Scarfone.
Say her last name. Scarfone. Megan. I'm just going to call him Megan. And he's got 4 children ranging from 2 to 14 years old. And so he has done a lot of stuff. He's been in this space. And most notably for us, he was a part of our dedication documentary that we did last year with the National Responsible Fatherhood Clearinghouse. How you doing, Joseph?
Man, I'm doing awesome. And I'm glad to be here, man. I know God wants me here because I was out working and my wife told me the power went out. And it just so happened to come back on at 6:45 and I had to be here at 7.
Yeah.
I know this is going to be a good one. I know it.
Yeah, divine intervention. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm going to say less because we really want to hear from you, and I really want people to know you. I want people wanting to know your story. I am about storytelling, on this show. Yeah, we're going to get the statistics out, the research, all the best practices, all that kind of stuff we're going to get out there. But I like for my listeners to know, my guests, to really know your heart, to know why you're in this space, and to know why this thing we call fatherhood is so important to you. So like with all my guests, Joseph, I'm going to start here with you. And that is, tell me your daddy's story. And you can tell me that story from the vantage point of you being a father, or you can tell me that from the vantage point of your relationship, whatever it is, with your father, or you could do both. Most people do both. And so it's up to you. What's your daddy's
Okay.
story?
I'll do both. So first, I want to say being a dad, it's just hands down the most incredible thing I've ever experienced. And it just so happens lately I've had a lot of conversations about fatherhood. And I'm glad to do it now on a bigger stage than just me and a couple of my boys. But my father's story is when I was a kid, my father and I, we had a really strained relationship. He had a strained relationship with the whole house when I was a kid. And there was things going on. They both had, my mom and dad both had their issues between substance use, the things they were battling. So the house was, I guess you would say it was broken. But my mom and dad, they stuck it out together, and they're still together now, 35 years later. But my father and I worked things out around when I was about 26, and we've had a great thing since then. He lives one street over, and he's been a great grandfather. And I've got to say, watching him as a grandfather, while he's a father to me still, has been like this wild experience, because it just has me like, I'm on fire about fatherhood, no doubt. But now I'm like, yo, I'm looking forward to grandfatherhood, because my son, he's 15. So, I've got a while to go. That's the oldest. But it's just like, wow, and it's crazy to see how he's grown to who he is now, and who I am, and how I've grown to who I am now. We've both been through our stuff. We both came a long way. And my struggle, between going on the substance use at a early age, in my early teens, I got on, around with substances, started taking pills, smoking weed, drinking, that kind of stuff. Started running around with gangs and just got into a lot of stuff. And a lot of it because my dad wasn't there like I needed him to be. And that's kind of what I was seeking, right? That group, that approval, I guess you could say that love, or just feeling cared about. Because I didn't always feel that, especially from him. Like, I can count on one hand how many times my dad told me he loved me when I was under the age of 18. And I can count on one hand how many times he hugged me, so that wasn't there. But through all the pain, everything I went through from my dad not being there like I needed him to be, I always told myself, I've got to be better than this when I become a dad. And you know what? I fell short of that still. But what happened is, I realized when you become an adult, or more so when you become a parent, it helps you see your parents through a different lens. Because when you haven't gone through somebody's struggles, it's hard to fully understand them and their why. Right. But when you experience the same things, you're like, okay, I feel you now. My bad. I got to apologize about some things because I get it now.
It's important to know both stories, right? And as parents, we got to stop holding off half the story and allowing our children to be grown before, my mother and I, we experienced that, Joseph, with, understanding something about my dad. I met my dad when I was 23 years old in Brooklyn. Just so happened my mother just ran into his wife at the time, or a cousin of his or a sister of his or whatever. And he found out I had just gotten home from the military, and they hooked it up and wanted me to, go and see him. He wanted to see me. And shortly thereafter, about a year or so after, maybe a year and a half after, he passed away. And so, when I did my documentary, Spit and Anger, it was moving around the country. People were like listening to this thing, watching this thing. It was impacting people like crazy. And one time, my mother actually was with me as I was going to do a screening in North Carolina. And I got a phone call from the White House. This was when Obama had announced My Brother's Keeper. And my film was supposed to show at UNC that night. And my mother was with me. And I said, you know what, Ma? I said, I think you've seen it enough times. I think you should speak on behalf of me. I think it would be a different twist to the story.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, I go to DC, she does it, I come back. I get back to the hotel room and my mother is sitting there in the dark and she's like, I'm like, Mom, what's up? You know, you good? You good? And she said, I had no idea what you did. She said, I had a sense of what you do, but I really didn't know what you did until tonight as they continued to kind of ask me more and more questions. And I got to apologize to you. And I was like, you know how your mother, I'm like, Mom, what are you talking about? I'm like, we good. Like, what are you apologizing for? And she said, because I should have had this conversation with you a long time ago. And she told me the story of how her family pushed my dad out of her life and told him that we didn't need him and had her move from North Carolina to New York now. So you're talking like the early 60s where there was no
Yeah.
Facebook and Instagram. When people
No.
disappeared back then, they disappeared for real. Right?
Yeah.
And so
You gone.
yeah, and she never, she never reached back in. She just kept moving forward because that's what her family told her to do. And she said she never understood the impact that had on me. And so my dad, when I finally met him, and I'm gonna end this because I really want to get into some questions I have for you. So when I finally met him, I learned that my dad had 7 other siblings that I didn't know about.
Mhm.
He was a deacon in his church. He was a Sunday school teacher. He had served in the military, he served in the war, and he was beloved by everybody in his space. So on one hand, I was really, really upset that a man like this did not have enough in him to seek me out. But on the flip hand side, I was angry with my mother for not allowing me to know him sooner like that.
Yeah.
And it has strained our relationship for almost a year and a half, 2 years. We almost didn't talk because I could not let that go. We're good now. And I say that all to say, when you think about your dad now, you think about your reconciliation and you think about you as a young Joseph and now you as a seasoned Joseph and you being able to see your life move forward as you watch your dad's life move forward into looking at his grandkids. Is there a point in your youth relationship with your dad that you have found at times you can't let go?
You know what? Now, no. But there was, I was 26 when I let it go. I'm 36 now, but it took a long time for me to let it go. But now that I have, it's like the most freeing feeling ever.
Wow.
And because it was when I think back, because we've all had to forgive people for things. Maybe someone's taken something from you. Maybe something said something about you. But we're talking about a whole different level of forgiveness here, right? And when I think back to my experience with forgiveness, I think this was my truest experience with forgiveness, where I fully felt it on just a whole level, because I harbor no ill will whatsoever. I don't even think about those things anymore. And the
Mm.
thing is, and I think what plays a large part in that too, is my dad has replaced all those memories with so many good ones now that when I
Mm.
think back on him, I can't even go that far back in my mind
Nice.
because it's been replaced.
That's a good. I mean, and that's where we want to be, right? We want to
Yeah.
get there. That's the true journey of forgiveness. To heal, then overcome, and then move forward, and not to drag that baggage along with you. Now, the thing I like about your story, and even the story that you told in our documentary, is you speak very candidly about the substance abuse time in your life. When you go back and you think about that, talk to me about the things that were going on in your life that allowed you to be able to slide into that space.
Man, I think just being around, I was around broken people
Mm.
at a broken time. So there wasn't a lot of checkpoints or stop points. My parents were both drinking, and my going into my teens, my parents were both drinking. they would, leave like Thursday, come back Monday. And we were allowed to party and drink and have people at the house. And then, going on and others, getting older, there was never any like, they wanted me to get help and they prayed and did everything they could, but it still kind of went on without a hard stop. Like, yo, you got to stop this or you can't come around. There's never that, but they was dealing with their own thing at those times. And so I get it. But going into it, man, a lot of it, now that I've been able to really analyze where the substance use came from, a lot of it, man, was the pain of not having my child. Because my son was born when I was like 21. My son's mother and I were going through a crazy relationship. And it was basically like he was born and she broke up with me. And then still let me see him. We tried to make it work. And then she shut me out, got with another guy, got married, and basically disappeared with him for 6 years. And during that 6 years is when my substance use went crazy. I couldn't deal with the pain of not having him or talking to him or anything. Like I didn't know what else to do on top of the pain and the trauma and everything from my childhood I was dealing with. The pain, because, I forget who said it, but I totally agree with it. It was described as when you don't have your child as a father, you're basically grieving the living. Is how I heard somebody say it. And that, I can't think of a better way to describe it than that. And so I just kept getting higher and higher and higher, and then I overdosed and died. I couldn't get any more high. It didn't fix anything. I still had the same pain. And, I eventually got help. But the one thing, like my mother would tell me, the one thing she told me that really hit me, she was like, okay, you want your son back. You want to see him. This is what he's going to see right now. Is this what you want him to see? Instead of self-destructing and all this other crazy stuff you're doing to deal with the pain and the loss, why don't you focus that same energy on becoming the man you ultimately want to be when you do meet him? And that was like a slap to the face, right? I'm like, dang, right? Like I do want him that bad, but if he comes here, he's going to see his dad sitting here getting blasted, right? Getting hot. And so I did what my mom said, and I started becoming the man I wanted him to see and ultimately be. And now him and I have a relationship, and of course now he's turning 16 in October, and of course now it's like me and my dad's situation all over again. Right now he's dealing with things he's upset with me about, and you know what? It's a tough situation because it's hard to describe to him about it, right? I've talked to him about it and did the verbal dance because I don't want to say bad things about his mom. Any boy is going to automatically defend his mom, number one. Two, it's not good to badmouth the other parent, period. And the thing is like, it's not like I wasn't there, right? Like she dipped with you. It's not, I didn't abandon you, but it's hard to have that talk without pointing a finger. And so I kind of, have to tiptoe around and I openly talk to him like, hey man, if you feel some kind of way, I get it. Let's talk. We've talked and it's still an ongoing thing. I think like me, it's going to take him a while to heal too, but I'm committed to loving him through the process.
So the crazy thing is, as you're talking, I just literally finished putting to bed a document that I've put together called Rekindling the Challenges of Dealing with an Estranged Relationship. And it's father-child relationship. And it's crazy because I began to write that because I had the same conversation that you're having right now with like 2 or 3 of other friends who had, two of them had children. I didn't even know they had children. And they just it was random. Joseph, it was random. They was just like, yo, Ken, man. I was like, can I talk to you? And I was like, yeah. I got this situation. Is there any advice? And I'm like, man, I hear this story too often. And so I took some time. I'm going to share this with you when we're done. I'm going to send it to you. Let me know what you think.
Nice.
And I literally sat down and created this whole document from the realest part of myself that I could get to, right? To be able to talk about the pain of not being able to reconcile a relationship with a child. And at the same time, knowing that most of what will occur to the benefit is out of your control. And you have to be in control yet out of control. It's the hardest thing to do, but it can be done, and it takes time for it to be done. We don't talk enough about. And then when there's a cycle, right? Because what you're describing is you and him being you and your dad, right? And so the other narrative and story that we don't really know, and you possibly might know, but we don't really know it in its deep infancy, which is your dad and his dad's narrative, right? And what that looked like, and his dad's narrative. This can be one of those things that is in this continuous cycle. And what you're describing now is the ability and the desire to break that cycle so it doesn't happen with his son or his child, to carry that stuff forward. When you were going through, you had something you wanted to comment about that?
I was just going to say, man, my mission period for the rest of my life, I'm just here to smash cycles, just break them, stomp them, you know what I mean? Two-step on them. I'm done with them. They need to get out this family.
Right.
I've been doing what I can to be the example and carry that flag.
And it's one step at a time, right? You can't, what's the old saying? You can't eat an elephant in one bite.
Yeah.
You have to take small chunks of the bigger elephant in order to be able to take it down. And so I just came from Africa and Kenya, and that narrative.
Man, I was so jealous in those pictures. It's like it's on my bucket list to be able to pet a rhino. Like I've been obsessed with rhinoceros since a kid. And when I saw how close you were to one, I was like, next time he goes, I need to go. Yeah, I don't know if that's possible.
Let you know, I'm going next year.
I want to pet a rhino.
I'm going next year. We're going to do some fatherhood stuff too.
Awesome, man. I don't mean to sidetrack you. What were you doing there?
So this was with a good friend of mine, Kwame Alexander, who's an accomplished author. He's probably one of the top children's authors in the country right now.
Yeah, I know who he is. I mean, I don't know him, but I know his work.
Yeah, and so about 7-8 years ago, through another friend, we connected with a project that he was involved in called Leap for Ghana. And, I went, that was my first time going to Africa. And when I went, I actually went to kind of do I was with some other educators and people, and they were doing stuff around education. And I wanted to do something around parental engagement, around father engagement. So I went along, and me, David Miller, and myself, we trained 300 teachers in Ghana, on methodologies and methods of education. And our task was to talk to them about the importance of both parent engagement and more specifically fatherhood engagement. So over the years, every year I went back, I was getting deeper and deeper into that space until 2018, Kwame dedicated a library in the village that we were in to his mother. And I was there and I was part of it, and I had books then. And so right now my Real Dads Read program is in that village, in that library. So my work is always around advancing parent engagement, and more specifically fatherhood engagement, and really trying to figure out how we learn from what we see in Africa and what's going on here in America. So that was like the ramp up for me. And then this past year he reached out, he's like, yo, Kenny, I'm going to Kenya. And I was like, word, that's always been on my bucket list. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to Kenya. I was like, what you going to do? He's like, the same thing we went to do in Ghana. He says, we going to teach some teachers. We connected with this NGO, doing some work. He says, I want you to come in and do some things, but I want you to do the parent engagement and the fatherhood thing. So it was easy for me to kind of climb on because we had already taken over, we had already kind of taken over that as a not-for-profit, our international arm was going to be centered around father engagement and literacy. And so it's part of our mission and our extended international arm. So it was Easy to Do Fathers Incorporated there. And we went there and I did the same thing. Taught about 25, 30 teachers about the importance of parent engagement and more specifically fatherhood engagement. Got Real Dads Read clubs now getting ready to launch in Kenya, in the Nairobi area. I'm getting ready to move out. Another NGO has reached out to me since then about coming and helping them do some fatherhood work. This NGO has reached out, wanted to figure out how to increase the amount of father engagement. And so it's just an extension of the work that I've already done. The safari part of it was really just after we did all the work and worked for like 6 days, we went on safari. But I'm gonna tell you, and
that's amazing work, man. That sounds, I mean, that's awesome, man. That is amazing.
Yeah. The safari piece of it, though, while you may think that, it was just about going and seeing lions and seeing, all the other things that we saw, there was a major epiphany that happened for me being and given this work, and that is the cycle of life. Like everything on this earth has a cycle, and it moves in cycles, and everything moves in whatever space it was destined to be. And so it was interesting to be in the middle of the Serengeti or in the middle of the Masai Mara with no fences. And so you're out there and there's nothing between you and a pride of lions. There's nothing between you and a leopard. There's nothing between you and a cheetah. There's nothing between you and rhino, elephants, giraffes, hyenas, all these things that we have all been told are dangerous to us, right? There's no fences between us. Yet everything lives in harmony. Right? Everything lives in harmony. So when I was thinking and really, contemplating about how I was going to take that messaging and roll it into my fatherhood, the message is really like we allow so many things to become fences in our relationship. Things that people have told us are dangerous. Can't work with the baby's mama because the courts, blah, blah, blah. I can't do this because this person don't like me. I can't do this because I don't have. And we are in this habit of putting fences between us and what the cycle of life really wants us to be able to engage in. And I was like, when I came back, now that I'm back, I'm really giving some deep thought in how I shift my work to tear down fences. Just like you said, smash, forgot what they call them now. What do they call when you curse? Generational curses. Smash generational curses that are fences between us and our destiny. Smash, behaviors. Smash, how we feel about this, and smash just to really so that we can get to true family and figuring out how do we heal from all of the old wounds that we have that have literally been created by the fences that we've put up. And so it's changed my concept of mine and how I'm thinking about this family stuff. And so you'll see that beginning to start moving in my work as I continue to move forward and talk more about this. But this podcast for me is one of those ways in doing that, in sharing stories. That was the thing that really stood out for me as I spoke to Kenyans and I spoke to Kenyan teachers and children, that stories are healing. That if you could tell people your narrative and tell people your story, they're going to glean and learn more from you by knowing who you are rather than you telling them what to do.
Yeah, totally agree, man. Totally agree.
Yeah. So that was my, that was the trip. And so you have now begun, or you've, in the past out of this work have also begun to work with dads. Tell me about that.
Yeah, man. So I ended up, on my journey, once I decided I needed to become the man that I wanted my son to meet, part of that journey was, actively seeking change and being intentional about it. And I found a fatherhood engagement organization in my community. And I went there and it was just hooked. Like, they had me. I was on fire. And went through there, ended up volunteering after I completed it. volunteered for a little while and got a job there, which was like a dream come true for me. Because sitting in those groups and hear other guys share their stories and their experiences from so many different backgrounds and cultures. And, it's like the more you talk to people, the more you find out you're like them. That's usually been my experience. When you get down to the core values, we're all a lot alike. And the more I talk to people, the more I find that we have a lot more in common than we may think. And that's one of the things I discovered there. And so I went on to work there, and it was literally a dream come true. I was there for almost 5 years before I took a leave of absence. I'm back there now, after taking some time to recharge and focus on me, because I got a little burnout, man. Which kind of sparked another project. I started a business in that time period, but through my burnout experience working in a fatherhood organization, because the other thing I found out about this is when I was working with this fatherhood organization, that's when I found out how many other organizations are really working and acting in the community. And, I had no idea there was so much help out there. And I get it, budgets are tight. You can't spend money on marketing, right? But I got connected with a bunch of different places. And through all the work I did there, working with dads and going to the end of the earth with them to help them if they were on my caseload or walked through our doors, I got burnt out. And I had to take a leave of absence, right? And it sparked a thing in me, a little epiphany about the importance of self-care. I kept giving and giving and giving, and I was just coming home drained, empty. I was dedicated to, I want to change the world. I want to help people, help dads, giving it everything I got, but I was leaving very little of myself to take home with me. And it's kind of got me on the self-care journey, man, where I'm looking in all the different ways to heal, all the different ways to be a better me, to take better care of myself, and kind of looking at different projects, man, because all the people on the front lines, the people that are helping dads or the people helping moms or people that are mentally ill, anyone that's out there that's working at these nonprofit organizations that are in communities helping people are dealing with immense stress. And I truly believe that if I can work with them on a self-care project and we can get the people on the front line taking better care of themselves, we can truly change the world. Because I think about how many people I saw so many people in my own organization that we lost to burnout that were great people that it was bad for the community that they work on, because they were so passionate and made such a difference. And I'm just thinking that's my city, my little community. Imagine that times the whole country.
Right. One of the cool things I like in watching your life on Facebook, because that's kind of how we do, right? We watch people's lives go past us on Facebook.
That's a good way to put it, man.
One of the cool things I like about watching your life, you're like a sitcom to me. I binge Joseph every now and then just to see what you're up to. And so I'm in the 3rd season right now. So
that's what it feels like.
Yeah. And so your wife, Megan, she just something about her presence, bro. Something about like when she looks at you, something about her aura, something about her just looks like she buys into you 1,000%. Talk to me about how she has supported who you are.
Oh man, I'm glad you brought that up. And I was just talking about this the other day, and to her, if it wasn't for who she is, I couldn't be who I am. A great friend, and he was my case manager years and years ago. He told me that relationships are designed to change us. And I fully believe that. Good relationships change us for the better, and bad relationships tend to change us for the worse, right? And you're in a good relationship when you start changing for the better. And if it wasn't for my wife fully standing behind me, I wouldn't be able to do the things I do, and it's as simple as that. None of this would be possible if it wasn't for her. You know, she's changed my life the way, you know, she showed me what love really is. You know, we both had to work through a lot of our past traumas together, right? Because, you know, your past stuff has a way of affecting current relationships if you don't deal with it. And so we both came with a lot of baggage. Like, we went to Africa, and we had to unpack that and work it. And she was committed to helping me unpack my bags, and I was committed to helping her unpack her bags. And the thing about it is the commitment from the beginning was, I'll never leave and you'll never leave. And we got married, and we believe that to be true, right? And I do everything I can to love her in the best way possible, because I've got 2 girls in the house now, you know, 3-year-old. Livy's 3 now, and Josie is 8. And so, you know, I've got, you know, the Ralphie's in the house. My oldest son comes down, visits all the time. So constant eyes are on. They look, you know, I always looked at how my dad treated my mom. And I know kids watch that. And so I know I've got to set an example so my daughters know what love looks like and what they should expect. And same for my son, so he knows, you know, what it looks like for how he should be. But most importantly, so my wife knows that she's honored, right? And the thing is, I was talking to friends the other day about this, man. Like, I get immense joy out of being a provider, right? I love, today felt like it was 110 outside. I loved every minute of being out there because I was taking care of business to provide for my family. And it just, you know, I love the purpose it gives me knowing that my house depends on me. And it's that kind of nag, like, yo, you always got to do right. You can't mess up. There's too much on the line. You can't go backwards, man.
Are you harder on yourself than you believe most people are?
Oh, man. Yes. And my wife tells me I got to let that go. But it's just, man, I felt like I wasted so much time. It's hard not to feel like I'm playing catch up. You know, because there's a lot, you know, if my life was a timeline, there'd just be like this huge blank spot, right? Between like 15 and 26. You could just put a smoke cloud there. And that's a lot of time wasted. You know, those years are important, right? Because not all 10 years are the same, right? There's a big difference between 80 and 90, that gap, and say like 14 and 25.
Right.
We're talking about a developmental gap as opposed to, you know what I mean? So those 10 years that I lost were crucial, man. That's the years I should have been building my foundation and preparing for a wife and kids. But I did everything out of order. I had the wife and kids, and then I had to prepare a house and grow into being a provider and grow into being the kind of husband that honors his wife in a godly way and teaches his kids to do so as well, man. I had to grow into this. And luckily, she's been behind me to hold my hand and grow into who she's been too. But it's awesome, man. I couldn't do it without her.
Yeah. You in the dedication video, you know, everybody is always praising, you know, your contribution to that documentary, but Darrell and Quintavious and Juan, all of you guys kind of equally, you know, shared yourselves in that documentary. But there was one thing. I love
their videos. I love them. I love their videos.
Yeah, but there was one thing that you talked about in there that struck me. It was kind of a quiet. We didn't really emphasize on it a whole lot, but we did actually capture some visual actualization of what you were talking about. And I used to always think about this, and I wanted to talk to you. I asked you this question, you know, around the guilt factor when it comes to finally getting it right, or at least what we believe is getting it right, and how that looks to the child who didn't see that, right? Having a guilt about how well you are treating your children now, and having your child that never saw that have to see that, and how do you reconcile those two things so that they don't begin to start believing that, oh, wow, he loves them more than me. It's not that. The you that you didn't see wasn't the me that I am today. It's kind of hard
Yeah.
to explain that, but can you talk about
Yeah.
that a little bit?
It is, man. And that's something that I always carry with me. That's always there. And one of the, I mean, I've got a multitude of ways that I'm using to deal with that. And one of them is if I buy one kid a pair of shoes, they all get a pair of shoes. If I do one thing for one, they all get it. And it may not be the same thing, whatever's important to them, right? On the same scale. And with my son, I have active conversations. He doesn't bring it up, but I know he notices it. And I tried to talk to him about it. He's like, oh, no, everything's fine. And maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm thinking more about it than he is.
Right.
But I'm always thinking about it. So it's like, one thing my mom told me, when we were little, I'd always be like, cause I got a sister, it's me and my sister. And I'd be like, you love her more. And she'd be like, no, my sister say, you love Joey more. You know how kids are. And one thing my mom told me, she was like, if every kid is saying you love the other one more, then you're doing something right. If it's just one saying that, you need
Right.
to look at what you're doing. So and that's something that's something simple like that, but it's stuck with me. I make sure I can spread everything equally. I've apologized for who I was in the past, and I say all I can do is my best to move forward and give everybody like the little puzzle pieces that make up me equally as I can. And it may never be enough, but I believe at the end of the day, effort matters, right? And so
As
I
a
just
child,
I just got to do it and hope it's enough in the ways that I do it.
absolutely. As a child, you can never see the differences, right? And so all of our children are different. Like they receive differently, they need
Yes.
differently, they
Wow.
express differently, they do everything differently, and it can look the same kind of love that you give one child can look totally different in how you give it to another child, and kids
Yep.
don't know how to analyze that, and because they just see what they see.
Yep.
Right? They just see what they see. So as we close, I want to talk about this. You got this entrepreneurship thing going, bro. Talk to me about how that feeds into all the things that Joseph is. How are you managing this entrepreneurial motor that you have inside of you?
I just feel like I found myself, and I found what makes me tick and happy and fuels me. I've always, ever since I was a kid, I would tell my mother, I want to be rich. I want to be a businessman I want to be rich so I can help people. I want to own an empire. I would always tell her that as a kid. And that desire was always there. I've always enjoyed reading about businesses, and I'd always think about business ideas, and it was always think and ideas, right? I was too busy doing other things to actually act upon anything that I thought of. And I became a man of action, and I've acted on the idea that I had, and it worked out. And I've heard, I'm a man of faith. I've heard God clearly say, I will continue to bless your business as long as you continue to live righteously. And that's what I've been doing. And here we are 15 months later, things are going better than I ever imagined. But the thing is still true though, is I want to help people. And there's a helping element in my business because some of my clients are elderly, disabled, physically unable to do the task that our service does. So there's, a helping angle there, the self-care, it's there. I'm just looking at ways that I can solve problems and help people through that way. And it's just, man, it's great finding, like, when you feel like you found your thing, you know how that feels, right? Because it looks like you certainly found your thing, man, because watching your Facebook, you living the life, man. I look at, like, I love when I get the chances to talk and interact with you and Patrick and some other guys, man, because y'all are the people I look up to. And I think y'all are just amazing men, and fathers and businessmen. And I mean, just the dedication y'all have to fathers and families in general is amazing. And watching the different ways that you do it creatively and find ways to reach people where they're at and keep up with the times. It's amazing. Y'all, like, I don't know how y'all have time to do any of the things you do. And especially be able to do them all at such a high level equally, man. I maybe do like one or two things great. I don't know if I can do 15 great like y'all do.
I don't know if they all great.
Like the last ones, you might see a little drop in quality.
Right.
You get past the first three, but not seriously. I love watching you guys, man. Yeah, I mean, I feed off people's stories and watching them and what they do, and I love it, man. I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, you talked about this earlier, and that is at the core of who we are. We just want to be servants. We just want to serve, And so, whatever gifts and talents that God has given me to be able to do that, and the quality of life that He has given me, and the trials and tribulations and triumphs and accomplishments that I've had, they all add up to who I am and what it is I do. And so my wife always says to me, "Babe, you make things look easy." And I said, "But they're not." She says, "I get that." She says, "But you make things look easy." And I said, that's because I'm prepared. I've been prepared. Like, it's not easy, but it is easy for me to do because I've been prepared. And so nothing that I do now is outside of the scope that I've been prepared for. I always tell people, like, for 15 years I was in radio. And people are like, "Yo, how do you do videos? How do you do photography? How did you?" I was in radio. I also published a newspaper for 7 years. So my ability to communicate comes from all of that learning. And yeah, it's really, really easy for me, because I understand the stuff. We're looking at this emergence of AI, right? And everybody's going crazy about AI and its relevancy and its credibility and all those kinds of things. And I'm just like, I'm in it and I'm deeply in it. And people are like, "How do you learn this stuff so fast?" Like, my academic background was computer science. All this stuff is code. It's just a way to run code and understand code. I understand it as I told somebody the other day,
Right.
I said, they were talking about evolution. And I was like, a lot of people are kind of talking about this and talking about that. And I'm like, and all these people don't remember it. And I remember it clear enough. My first computer was run on a software called MS-DOS. And in order to get that computer to work, you had to code to get it to work. Right? So when you're sitting down and you're running Microsoft and blogs and all that stuff, what you're not doing is having to code it. But I understand what the code looks like on the inside. AI is just a more sophisticated, highly sophisticated mechanism of coding. And in order to work it, you have to understand coding. But because I'm so comfortable with it, I can sit and I can watch X's and O's and dots and commas and hashtags and this, and understand that I can write a 25 letter code. And if I have the period in the wrong place, it's not going to work. And to analyze it down to that level and be able to see that minutely, that, whoa, I see what's wrong. This is a 0, not an O. And I got to change it to a 0 in order for it to work. And so evolution is something that's a part of who we are. In the same way that we have to evolve with technology, we have to evolve in the same way with family. Right? We have to evolve with all of this stuff. And as human beings, we have to evolve in a way that we make it very clear that at the end of the day, the primary purpose for all this work that we're doing is for the health and well-being of our children. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's exactly what it boils down to, because one thing I've always said and one thing I've always told the guys on my caseload is you can't be a great dad if you're not a great man first.
Yes. Yes.
You can't be a great brother or a great uncle if you're not a great you first.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I've noticed that everybody tries to be everything else and they skip that one step. You first, right?
Right.
You've got to be great first. And that's really what put me on the journey is I wanted to be better. So it's like, how do I do it though? I didn't have like the examples of it. I seen what not to do, but you need more information than what not to do, right? That just tells you what you can't do. That doesn't tell you the proper ways to do it though. And that's what I had to learn because, ultimately, got an education background. I can't teach things I don't know about. I can't go teach a class on, forensics if I know nothing about it. And so I can't teach my kids, things like accountability, or, growth or understanding themselves or building up self-esteem, all these things that they're going through as they age and progress. I can't teach them these things if I'm not learning and growing myself. Like you said, we got to keep up with the technology too, but also kids are going through things so much earlier. You got to have an ear to the streets. I've got nieces and, I got little kids I can tap into, like, hey, what's seventh grade really like these days? Because it's not like seventh grade that you and I experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. So if you could give a piece of advice to a young dad that might be struggling, particularly those that might be in dark places right now, looking for that light, looking for anything that's going to serve as a lifeline for them to climb out of whatever situation they believe has them locked down, what kind of advice would you give them?
To a young dad, I would just tell him, this is, we owe it to our kids to give them a childhood they don't have to recover from. Every investment in ourselves is an investment in our future, our kids, right? And it's hard to think beyond yourself when you're in a dark place. So that may resonate with a dad, it may not, depending on how dark of a place there is. So I'll say something else also. It comes down to this: it's easy to sit and suffer in silence. That's easy. We as men, I'm tough. I'm not going to ask for help. I'm not going to say anything. Everything's, nah, I'm okay. I'm okay. How you doing? I'm okay. Nah, man, there's no honor in suffering in silence. It's easy to do that. It is easy to stay in your house and sit there and be depressed and whatever. It's as far as, I'm not minimizing depression when I say that, so follow me through. It's easy to sit there and suffer. It's hard to ask for help. It's hard to be like, yo, man, I need help. I'm in this place. That's hard. Asking for help, and when I went to a fatherhood organization, was up there with the hardest thing I ever did in my life. Because my whole life I was conditioned to never talk about our family. What happens in our family stays in our family, number one. How do I get help if I can't talk about what hurt me? So, but asking for help was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. And that's the hard part. But if you're still here, you want to live more than you don't. I'll put it like that. Ask for help. There's tons of resources out there. There's people, if you want to talk to someone who looks like you, they're there. If you want to talk to someone different, they're there. There's more people than you could ever imagine that dedicate their life every day they wake up to helping you in the situation you're in right now. You're not alone.
Great advice, bro. Great advice, man. I love you to death. And as my bishop, my chair, Bishop Ferguson always says, I love you to death, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. And so,
I feel the same way, man. Likewise.
yeah, you're a brother for life, man. And whatever I can do to help you, move whatever it is you need to move, business, I'm just a phone call away. And so I might
I
see.
appreciate that, man. I do got an idea you might like.
Okay, we can share that. Talk offline.
Definitely.
And so, but my thing is, you prioritize what's important to you, and I prioritize helping people that genuinely need it and genuinely want it, right? And so, and that are willing to pay into themselves, however that looks, however you talked about this earlier. However you pay into yourself, like you have to invest in yourself. You can't always seek for people to invest in you if you're not willing to invest in yourself. And what you've talked about is those things that you've done to invest in yourself, which makes it easy for me to want to invest in you when I've seen that you already have the capability and desire to invest in yourselves. And so thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to all of our I Am Dad podcast listeners. Again, don't hang this up without hitting that subscribe button, either on YouTube or on whatever other podcast platform that you happen to be on. And I'm going to be pressing this for the next couple of months to see if we can get those numbers up so that we can catch up and get to those upper 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 spots across the world. Thank you so much. I'm Kenny Braswell, CEO of Fathers Incorporated. I love you. See you next week. Peace out.
Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. You've been listening to I Am Dad Podcast. We hope that you have been informed, encouraged you to think, or even inspired your heart for the love of dads. The conversation does not end here. Come back and join us next week. Same time, same place. Or you can continue the dialogue on our I Am Dad Facebook page. We also invite you to listen to past episodes, learn more about us, and keep up with special activities by visiting IamDadPodcast.com. That's IamDadPodcast.com. Until next time, I leave you with this reminder of manhood from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Because of this reminder, I will always understand that I am Dad, period.